Hey, it is the NBA DFS strategy show. Of course, I have the live before lock background up, so let me adjust that. Josh Engelman style. Let's see, I should have it set up for 1, 2 clicks. Look at that. Josh, you should be proud of me, even though you're not watching the show. So which of Josh players torpedoed him last night? He was on quite a little streak with Jalen Brunson and Jonathan Isaac. Oh, you didn't do the the deep dive with him. It was with Alex yesterday. How did your day go, more importantly?
It was fine. Lost some in tournaments, which is what's going to happen most nights.
It's unfortunate that happens most nights. That happened to me as well. Not only that, I lost in cash games because I was busy screwing around and didn't get my lineup set. Apparently, you needed to play James Harden in cash. Who knew? Oh, wait, I did, and still didn't do it. That's what happens sometimes, Adam. How were you feeling about the Wizards last night without one Bradford Beal?
I think they suck without Beal.
Well, I'm setting it up because here's the fun one. Did you know that Bradley Beal now has multi-position eligibility on DraftKings?
Oh, finally, he just had to not play.
What position do you think they gave him?
Those are actually the right positions.
Small forward and shooting guard.
Yeah.
Yep, I would agree. Because there are 3 other guards that have been rotating through at point. In addition to Beal handling the ball a ton, I think that small forward is a much more appropriate position than point guard with this current iteration of the team.
Yeah, he's the starting small forward right now.
All right, oops. I don't go into that window because that will make us look funny. All right, we're getting, make us look funny. Like we ain't need any help with that. But we've got the DFS strategy show here. I'm poking around doing a little cleanup on the back end. Was working on all sorts of content that we have today. Right now we've got all sorts of deals, starting off with the 2020 promo code. If you've not yet signed up for Osmo, you can get 20 days of all access premium for $20. That is $1 a day. That is done by using the promo code 2020. So if you have not yet done that, you're crazy. That gives you full access to Slack. And of course, when you have access to Slack, you have access to Adam 24/7. That's the best deal that we have here. The other deal that we have, if you're already loving the Osmo product, and you should, you have the chance to get $200 off an annual subscription. That's a 1-year deal. That is the largest discount we have offered. And we do not offer these discounts lightly, so you do want to take advantage of them. The promo code for that is New Year, all one word, and you can find this information on the Osmo website itself. You can also find it on Osmo_COM on the various tweets that we have. I think it's still the pinned tweet, but both of these promo codes end in 6 days, so don't dilly-dally. All right, moving along here. That's going to be my crutch word and transition word of the day, I've decided. In honor of Matthew McConaughey. It would be more fun if it was Matthew McConaughey's birthday today. I don't know that it's not, so technically it still could be. What is it? It's not Occam's razor. What's the other hypothesis that if you don't really know the truth, whatever you think could be the truth? I don't remember. I didn't take philosophy.
I do know Occam's razor. I don't know the other one.
Well, Occam's razor is rather basic. It's that the simplest explanation is typically the most likely explanation.
Yep.
Excellent. I think he came up with that while he was shaving or something, but anyway. There we are with that. So we've got 2 early games here. First game teeing off at 3:30. That is the NBA. We have NHL going off at 1. There's a 4-game early slate. We have content for that. And there will be a show for the 7 o'clock main slate for NHL. We also have a couple shows for NFL today. NFL kicks off at, I want to say 4:35, I believe. And then there is also a game tonight. And then there are 2 games tomorrow for the NFL. We will have a show tomorrow. For NFL Live Before Lock. That will be going off, wait for it, just before lock. That's why we named the show Live Before Lock. All right, Adam. First game we have here is one that's not really exciting. So we've got Memphis at the Clippers. Clippers are favored by, depending on the site you're looking at, to between 10.5 and 11.5 points. It's unlikely that Paul George is playing today. He played about half of the last game, left with a sore hamstring. I don't think they will need him today. We also have question marks going with Jay Crowder, who is dealing with a sore ankle. He had missed a couple games, came back, was reasonable in his last one, but with ankle injuries, it doesn't take much to re-aggravate them, or depending on how your body reacts to the swelling, he may or may not be in the lineups. Let's assume George is out. For anybody looking at these as a one-gamer, there is a two-game slate, I guess, as well on some of the sites, the 3:30 and the 6 o'clock. Is it? I'm guessing Kawhi Leonard may not be your first choice, assuming a big game here by the Clippers. Would you consider Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, who has seen his price suppressed, finally had a decent game in his last outing, but had disappointed lately? What do you think the ripple effects are going to be with Paul George out?
It should be really, really good for all of the other Clippers. DraftKings did a good job of pricing up the Clippers, so it's at least you have to make decisions. But without George on the floor this year, Kawhi's averaged 1.58 DraftKings points per minute. He's been playing big minutes lately. It's a good matchup against Memphis. And then on top of that, you also should see more production from Williams and Harrell, because recently, now that the Clippers had been fully healthy, you had finally been seeing Paul George and Kawhi Leonard's minutes staggered, which means that one of them, normally Kawhi, was on the floor with that second unit with Williams and with Harrell. So instead of, like we're seeing for most of the season, instead of a lot of Williams and Harrell's minutes being where they're the two primary guys on the floor, you had one of the stars out there too. Now you should go back to having them running the show with the second unit, which gives more usage to Williams and Harrell. So all three of those guys should benefit, and then potentially more field goal attempts for guys like Landry Shamet that are secondary options.
All right,
and then
Landry Shamet, there's the name we haven't heard in a while. How are you feeling about Memphis here? They, of course, are taking it easy on some of their youngsters, which makes sense because this is, while not a lost season for them, it's a transition season. And they're, it's no longer the grit and grind teams of the mid-2010s. This is a new decade, so they've decided to try a new playing style. Perhaps not because of the new decade, but let's just go with that at the moment. It's one of four games, or one of four teams in our player pool on this early one. Does anybody stand out on any day-to-day when you first look at Memphis? What are the keys that you're trying to figure out there, if you can find something that you like or dislike as your general baseline?
Valanciunas is normally the first spot to look at. His salary. He played 29 minutes last game. Normally, you're going to get somewhere between 25 and 30. He's cheap enough where I think he's a reasonable option. Jaren Jackson is not overly expensive either, but a little bit more expensive than Valanciunas. So I would lean toward him. And then Dylan Brooks' salary continues to fall. The minutes are up and down. He's being backed up by DeAnthony Melton, which isn't perfect for him because Melton is actually a competent backup. But you should still get around 28 minutes from Brooks. And the salary falling to $4,400 on DraftKings looks like a pretty good value.
All right, our second game of the early slate, and again, we've got projections for this behind the paywall. We've got Alex's player grades, etc. So this one is not without decent content readily available. And use that promo code 2020 and get on behind the paywall here for 20 days, just $20. Toronto at Brooklyn. There is not a Fred Van Elite contest today. There will be the next time he is on the main slate. But we do have an interesting one here. I say interesting because Brooklyn's actually favored by a bucket at home. I was not fully expecting this, even with the absolute decimation of Toronto. They've actually been chugging along. Obviously, no Kawhi Leonard. He's now with the Clippers. You have Pascal Siakam, who's out, Marc Gasol, who's out, Norman Powell, who is out. Everything is being shouldered at the moment by Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, and then Serge Ibaka. They still manage to hate Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, and DFS still manages to love Chris Boucher. What do you like from the tea leaves this morning for Toronto? Because Brooklyn, not a pushover. And Brooklyn fans have to have some comfort in this because they have Kyrie Irving, who's going to be joining the team here shortly. And then they've got Kevin Durant healing up here. So things are looking up for Brooklyn. But in today's matchup, how do you feel about Toronto?
I like the backcourt as usual. You get so many minutes from Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry. VanVleet specifically on DraftKings at only 7,300 looks like a great value. He should, assuming the game's competitive, he should play 36 plus, probably like 37 or 38 minutes. He has a usage rate since the Pascal Siakam injury up around 28, 29%. And again, the minutes should be there. Kyle Lowry leads the league in minutes played. He's coming off another game where he played a little over 40 minutes against Miami. His salary is not as affordable as VanVleet's, but anytime that you're getting someone playing around 40 minutes a night and he's a greater than 1 fantasy point per minute player on average, that obviously gives you a lot of upside.
All right. Yeah, that's one's pretty straightforward. Brooklyn side of things, how are you feeling about Jarrett Allen in particular in this one? He's one guy I haven't been able to seem to get a good read on lately. He tends to, I don't want to say inexplicably lose minutes from time to time to DeAndre Jordan. He just seems to lose out to him when I roster him. But what do you got for us?
It depends on the starting lineup in part. He came off the bench against Dallas in the last game, and DeAndre Jordan got the start.
But revenge, Adam, revenge.
Yeah. In that game, they each played 24 minutes. If Allen goes back to the starting lineup, I think it's a spot you can take advantage of because even though the minutes are still volatile when he starts, it does give him the advantage. And normally you're going to see like 26, 27 minutes. His salary came down a bit as a result, probably of last game. He's only 5,800 on DraftKings. If Jordan starts, then he's a good play at 5,200.
All right. Let's move along here. Unless you have anything else.
Dinwiddie.
Oh, Dinwiddie. So, yes, that brings up, I've heard that Dinwiddie plays gets a lot of support in the Chinese spy community, which is kind of interesting. That was one area I was not expecting to see happen. But how are you feeling about Dinwiddie?
I think the salary's really affordable. He should play around 34 minutes. Garrett Temple's expected back, which doesn't. I mean, it's not that it makes Dinwiddie worse. It's just that if Temple were out, I think that Dinwiddie would have even more upside. But either way, he's been really, really good since Kyrie went down. Mid-30s usage percentage, assist percentage up over 30%. I would put him behind VanVleet and similar to Lowry because of the matchup stuff. But I think that he looks like one of the better guard options.
All right. I wanted to see one other item here. They were mentioning. Sorry, I was pulling a Lofty. Oh, Karis LeVert. Sounds like he's coming back today.
That takes usage away from Dinwiddie, though.
We'll look at his, let's see, Karis LeVert, and we'll go to our friends at Roto World since they're usually up on things. I'm going to see if there's any sort. Now, it was a thumb injury, so in theory, he's perhaps not in basketball.
Yeah, he's listed as he's probable.
All right. He has been going through on-court activities to keep his conditioning high. Return to action on Saturday. Adrian Wojnarowski, blah, blah, blah. 7-week absence, blah, blah, blah. All right. LeVert may face some sort of minutes cap upon his return, but we don't know what that will be. Well, he's not going to play more than 48, would be my guess.
Seems reasonable.
All right. And then from there, we'll monitor it, Adam.
Yeah.
We'll monitor it.
Yeah, so I mean, he should be the point guard with the second unit, which does take some value away from Garrett Temple, among other guys.
All right, now let's kick this off with a real barn burner. Utah, Orlando, woohoo! We've got ourselves a main slate here. 9 games on the main slate today. You have Utah road favorites by 3.5. No Jonathan Isaac. It looks like Aaron Gordon is actually not carrying any sort of notification tag, let alone injury tag at this point. Is that possible? This is a back-to-back, Adam.
Yeah, it seems unusual, but I mean, they'd be pretty thin if they rested him.
Oops, I think it is a back-to-back.
It is.
Oh, thank you. It did. Oh boy, this is the days have all blended together. Plus, with all of the holidays, it felt like we had a week and a half of Sundays. Now I know what it feels.
I haven't known what day it is for like 2 weeks.
I was just gonna say, now I know what it feels like to be Adam, a DFS tout. Well, I guess Sunday is it's NFL day. Otherwise, you just kind of keep moving along
Yep.
and taking whatever the slates are providing you or whatever the schedules are providing you. So let's see. Yes, last night it was Gordon who got the start. Jonathan Isaac out. Gordon played 31 and a half minutes, 16 points, 8 boards, 3 assists. Tougher matchup here, but of course they will need him and Nikolai Vucevic going against the front court of the Utah Jazz. Secondary plays here. We've got, personally, I like Joe Ingles down to 5,400 on, let me just double check, that's FanDuel. I like him at 5,400 on FanDuel. Let me see his DraftKings price. I want to say he's was like 6'1 or 6'2. That was a little higher than I had been expecting. He's someone I like to look to, but this is not necessarily the best matchup with 18 teams in our player pool. Let's start off with the Magic side here. Yes, Joe Ingles is 6,100. Let's start off with the Magic here. What is the trickle down effect of Aaron Gordon against a team that definitely will have Rudy Gobert on the floor for 35 or so minutes today?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough matchup for Orlando. Not really the type of matchup where I get too excited about Gordon, because it's pretty unlikely that you're getting, a fast-paced game here or a lot of opportunities for him to get out and run. So he's cheap enough where, it's not the craziest idea, but certainly not a priority for me. The guy that looks best is Vooch at 7,900. He has a tough matchup with Gobert, but the good thing about Vooch is that it's not like he's just dependent on scoring at the rim. He can pull Gobert away from the basket. He's a good passer. He's a good rebounder. So I think his salary is just still a little bit lower than it probably should be. And normally when you get someone going against Gobert and the Jazz, their salary or their ownership comes down a bit. So kind of like we saw last night where Vooch was in a tough matchup, but he was really low owned at a very reasonable price point. He's a guy that I always like to roster if he's going to be low owned in tournaments, just because he averages about 1.3 fantasy points per minute, and he has a really high ceiling.
All right, as I'm moving around looking at the different. This is just the game that's not overly exciting, but we've seen some really interesting things here from DJ Augustine lately. Like he's making his shots, which in turn unlocks some of his fantasy upside. Is that a bit of a mirage, or is this a potential trend at the moment with the rotation favoring him coming off the bench?
Yeah, it gives him more minutes with, now Isaac before it was Gordon being out. It's just more minutes that Ross can play at the 3. It's more minutes that Fultz and Augustine can play alongside each other. Yesterday, we got 31 and a half minutes from Fultz, while we also got just shy of 29 from DJ Augustine. They closed together against Miami, which I think – so basically what you want to do is not that it's too much of a concern on this slate, because it's not a really appealing matchup anyway, but don't play more than 2 of Ross, Augustine, and Fultz in the same lineup, because you're not getting all three of those guys closing unless Evan Fournier gets hurt or something. So that's a rule that I would set. But with how much Augustine's playing alongside Fultz now, I think that it obviously makes him a more viable option, and it also makes it so in more appealing matchups you could roster them together.
That is so. Let's talk for a second Fantasy Cruncher, because we've got a lot of people that are new and using it, and I get a gazillion questions in our premium Slack asking me, "What do you do? How do I do this? What do I want to do with that?" My first general thing to someone who's using Fantasy Cruncher for the first time, I say, have you tried to upload your lineups? If the answer is no, and we are within 90 minutes before lock, I mentioned that they probably should unregister, because if you're not used to uploading things in a data sense, in a data format, it can be a little tricky. If you know how to do that, and once you've done it once or twice, you're going to know how to do it. It's not a tough task to master. It's just that there are a gazillion ways you can screw it up if you don't know what you're looking at. Once you've got that down, the world is your oyster. So one of the things that I really like on Fantasy Cruncher is you can set groups. There's a little checkbox down at the bottom of the screen where you create groups that says save for later days or use for future days or something along those lines. So a group like Adam is describing is one that you can set up if there's been injuries or changes where you have a group of players that you don't want to play more than a couple of them together. For example, today's slate, let's use the San Antonio Spurs. So we know DeJounte Murray is away from the team. That bodes well for Patty Mills, Derek White, and Bryn Forbes. But which one has a better opportunity? I don't know. Nobody knows, because those guys just take turns doing well, and whoever has the hot hand gets more minutes. So I would put the three of them in a group, and I would say something along the lines of don't play more than two. What this does is it then applies all of your other individual player exposures and rules on this group of players, but it won't put all three of them in the same lineup. That is one way you can avoid the optimizer, which is going to be agnostic and just look for the best points per dollar play in combination with the other rules that you have set up. You can keep from getting too overloaded on a particular team. The Wizards, another good example. With everybody sort of healthy now, they've got a bunch of redundant players. I don't want all of them on the same lineup. So you can set something like Washington backcourt and create a rule. I've done this with Dallas, with their front court. Well, we've seen some changes here with what's going on with Powell and Maxi Kleber. So what you want to do is label these groups so you can easily find them, because sometimes you want to change them, adjust them, disable them, or turn them off depending on the size of the slate, if you're playing a short slate, etc. But it is nice to have these recurring baseline groups just marching forward with you each day, so you don't have to recreate a lot of them from scratch, because sometimes you'll forget, which two players, never play on the, nerlens Noel and Steven Adams haven't shared the court yet this season. Well, that's one I want to keep in there all the time, but I don't want to remember the other 6 center combinations that are just like that, because it's hard to remember unless you're crawling around in this information all day, like Adam is.
Yeah, I was gonna say I remake mine every day, like out of OCD, but I don't recommend it. It takes a lot of time.
Yes. Now, for those of us cruising home, getting home about 6:15 and trying to fire up some strategies and some fun, you may want to use some of these time-saving tips. Speaking of time-saving tips, I'm going to throw it out there one more time. Best deal we've ever had. Osmo, promo code 2020, $20, 20 days worth of all access premium. All right, Adam, back to this exciting game. Is there anything else you would like to hit on here? Normally, I don't like to cross games off, but hey, we do have another, 8 to talk about.
Yeah, it's just not a very appealing game. Maybe people go back to Terrence Ross today. It's not like he's still cheap. He still has the opportunity to do well. But the thing to keep in mind is that with players like him, you really just want to roster them when they're low owned, and then get away when everyone else is going, because he's not giving you a lot in the way of peripherals. He's not playing huge minutes. He has, a path to more minutes with Isaac out, but you're still most likely getting 25, 26 minutes, and he's very scoring dependent.
All right, let's look on. Damn it, there was all right again. Matthew McConaughey, I'm channeling you. This is a fun one. OKC, Cleveland. Kind of mentioned the rule with Steven Adams there and nerlens Noel. I actually like nerlens Noel today. I like him on DraftKings. He's 4,500. There was not that many discount centers that were very appealing today. I was do the cheat sheets on Saturday, so I was working my way through the player pool and just kind of taking a look at what I wanted to see. So he's someone that kind of stood out to me, just if you're looking to save. There's a nice host of mid-tier options today at center, and 1 or 2 spendy ones that we'll talk about, but he seemed like a decent guy on the low end. On the other side, with Cleveland, we do have them on a back-to-back. I want to point that out because there is a chance that either Kevin Love or Tristan Thompson comes down with something, we'll just call it a back-to-back, and may not play today, or they may not play tomorrow. But if they are out, then Mr. Henson comes into play also at a very low price. If both those guys are in, I'm not really interested in Henson. What are you seeing here from the front court in this particular matchup for either side?
So Adams' minutes have been up, playing 29, 30 a night, which I certainly don't want to pay 4,500 for Noel. You basically just need Adams to get in foul trouble at that point, or Noel to have a ridiculously efficient game. It's also not a very good rebounding spot if Thompson is in. The Cavs over the last month have they're tied with Boston for the second fewest offensive rebounds allowed per game, which is a big deal for Adams. Total rebounds, they have allowed the third fewest as well. So not the most appealing spot for Adams. I think that you can do better at center. Paul, Gilgeous-Alexander, Schroeder, they're all reasonable options in a good matchup against Cleveland. You do want to keep in mind that their salaries have come up. partly as a result of when Gallo was out and they were getting more minutes, and also just probably for the matchup. So I think that the main guys on Oklahoma City, all 5 of the starters, are reasonably priced, but none of them look like standout values.
Yeah, and kind of the interesting one here on with regards to DraftKings, so I'm going to drop this in chat just because this is a free feature that we have that some people might be interested in, but it's a nice way to kind of define a player pool early on in the day. This is not generally updated throughout the day, but it's a good way you can see our projections coming in with guys highlighted for as cash game plays or just intriguing tournament options. But the front court tonight, I only highlighted 2 options across everything because there's still a lot of news that we need to understand, etc. But Sabonis and LaMarcus Aldridge were the only guys that I felt from the front court tonight that really were cash reasonable options. There is a boatload of people in the backcourt that are quite interesting here, and it's more of a unique build today on DraftKings if you're trying to come up with that optimal lineup. I mean, of course people are going to try to get, in Luka Doncic, Buddy Hield, Jamal Murray, guys like that. But 2 guys I did tag were Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chris Paul. I feel both those guys in this particular matchup with Cleveland have a nice opportunity, and as Adam mentioned, they're reasonably priced, $7,500 there for Gilgeous-Alexander and $7,800 there for Chris Paul. Those are numbers they can both get on top of. It feels like reasonable medium outcomes have them with flirting with around 50 fantasy points. Floors should be at least 30 for both of them. Upside, well, that's where it's going to vary. Do they pick up a couple extra steals, or their shot falling, etc., etc.? But this is one where I'm kind of interested in both those guys, and hence where Nerlens Noel ended up making the player pool because I couldn't find anybody else worthwhile. But as you look to this overall game, what do you like here in the absence now of Jordan Clarkson? What are we seeing from Shetty Osmond, Darius Garland, etc.? Is there anything from the Cleveland backcourt that is interesting, or is it just kind of a tougher matchup for them?
I mean, it's a tough matchup. I'm pretty much always, until this price moves, going to have interest in Kevin Porter, just because I think the opportunities are there for him. Also, Larry Nance is out of this game, so you could potentially see more minutes for Porter as well, potentially more minutes for Chetty. So it'll be interesting to see how the rotation goes there. But I think that Porter is still a guy you can take a chance on. Like, for example, obviously we've only talked about 2 games on the slate so far, but Terrence Ross, it's the same price as Kevin Porter. There's a good chance I would think that maybe people go back to Ross after his really good game last night. Porter's the same exact type of play. So I have interest in him as long as he's going to be low owned. I think that, you can pick up a couple of extra minutes with Nance being out.
Continuing along here to our next game, Indiana at Atlanta. John Collins left last night's game early, dealing with a sore back. We'll have to see what his status is since they are playing consecutive days here. We do know that Malcolm Brogdon is out, which gives us some interesting options here with Aaron Holiday, with TJ McConnell. They have seen their price tick up just a little bit, not egregiously, but just a little bit here in the face of an outstanding matchup for them going against Atlanta. We know that Atlanta does tend to play better at home. It's not great when John Collins is missing, but they still have Trae Young there, 7-point home underdogs. Starting off with the Pacers backcourt here, how are you feeling about Aaron Holiday, TJ McConnell with their increased price tags?
I like Holiday. He's $5,600 on DraftKings, so it actually came down, I think, $100 from the last game. He lost some minutes last game due to foul trouble, the game against Denver. He only played the first 46 seconds of the third quarter after picking up his 4th foul. Got the 22 minutes in that game. I would expect 28 to 30 minutes, barring foul trouble, and that makes him a pretty appealing value in a really good spot against Atlanta. McConnell, I'm a little bit more cautious of, because even though he played 26 minutes against Denver, he didn't play a single minute alongside Aaron Holiday. That's something that we've seen in the past too when Brogdon is out. People always want to give a big bump to TJ McConnell, and it's easier for him to get more minutes because all you need to happen is Aaron Holiday to get in foul trouble or something. But Indiana really hasn't been playing him many minutes alongside Holiday. So if you assume that you're getting 28 or 30 minutes from Holiday, which is normally going to be the case, it's tough to give McConnell more than, say, 20 minutes, like giving him a couple minutes alongside Holiday potentially, but we just haven't seen them running them alongside each other a lot. So it is a great matchup for McConnell, and he is a very productive player when he gets the minutes. I just wouldn't be projecting 24, 25 minutes for him.
Okay, that was one. That is a nice call out there. TJ Warren, Sabonis, Miles Turner as we move on to the front court here going against Atlanta. Anybody popping for you? Over their last 15 games, Atlanta's actually playing at the fastest pace in the league. On a fun note, and we'll talk about their offensive options, they have the worst offensive rating over that same time. So they play fast and they play horrible. That's kind of the opposite of the Washington Wizards. They are a bottom 10 team for defensive rating. They are currently allowing 110 points per 100 possessions. So that is, again, over their last 15 games. So this is a spot here which is favorable for the Pacers. How you feel as we move towards their front court?
I mean, I like everyone on Indiana. They're all reasonably priced. They all should play pretty big minutes here. One piece of news to keep an eye on that will go completely overlooked because nobody really cares is Edmund Sumner, who is questionable. He missed the last game. He's not a viable option one way or the other, but if he's out, it just makes them even more thin, and it makes it easier for Miles Turner to get more minutes. Like last game, we saw Goga get about 9 minutes off the bench, but Turner goes from playing like 28 to 30 minutes to playing 35, and you get more minutes from Sabonis at the 4, and everyone kind of shifting up a spot to account for Sumner not being able to take 14, 15 minutes off the bench. So that's news that does change the rotation a bit. If he's out, it does help to solidify playing time for guys like Turner and Jeremy Lamb. So I think that they're all pretty reasonable options. They all played huge minutes against Denver. I think that the median projection for those guys is more likely 34 for Warren, 31, 32 for Lamb, but at their salaries, especially Warren 5,700, Turner at 5,300 on DraftKings, those look pretty nice. And then obviously Domantas Sabonis is expensive, but he's the offense. He's pretty much the focal point of the offense here.
Do you know we're already at the 2-month anniversary of Goga Bitadze week?
Wow, that was fast.
Technically, it was really just 3 games. 2 of them were starts. 4th game of the season, he managed to get 31 fantasy points in 25 minutes. They rewarded him the next 2. That was against Cleveland. They rewarded him with the start against Chicago. He got 26 fantasy points in 19 minutes. And then he also, in the next game, his only other start of the season, 32 fantasy points in 32 minutes against Charlotte. Since then, let's see, he has scored about, let's be generous and call it 140 fantasy points in the ensuing 2 months. So, well, it was a moment. We shared a moment chasing Amy. I want to talk about awful plays. I want to talk about Mr. Hunter here, DeAndre. 4,500. DeAndre Hunter, heavily dependent upon scoring to get his fantasy production. He starts, he plays a crap ton of minutes, but he literally does not much else besides scoring. So if he gets in the upper teens, it's a decent game. If he doesn't, it's a horrible game, and he actually can torpedo your lineups. This is with starting and averaging, eyeballing it, probably 28 minutes per game. His last 4 games, 12 fantasy points, 25 fantasy points, 13 fantasy points, 9 fantasy points. Yes, that is starting and playing heavy minutes. There is no need to go to DeAndre Hunter today, is there?
I think he's okay. I certainly don't love it. Like, the matchup's not good against Indiana, but he is 4,500. Assuming Collins doesn't play, it helps to solidify his minutes. He should get more run at the 4. I'm not excited about DeAndre Hunter, but I think he's a fine value.
How about Alex Len? Couple bigs for him to go against. Is that someone we can consider? Is Jabari Parker permanently in the doghouse with yet another team? What do you like from the Atlanta front court here? Because they've got some guys to go against, so they're going to need to get some minutes, particularly if let's assume John Collins is out, and then we'll talk about Collins individually.
I think that Len is okay. I would rather roster a $4,600 Len than a $4,500 Noel. I think you have the potential for like 23, 24 minutes from Len, and he is a productive player when he's out there. Parker's the one that really stands out, though, assuming that Collins sits, you should have Parker back in the starting lineup. Not a guarantee. I mean, they could go a different route, but assuming Parker starts and you can plug him in for 28 to 30 minutes again, his salary has dropped from where it was when he was starting previously. DraftKings did a very good job being proactive, getting him from 3,700 last night to 4,900 today. But I think that's still a little too cheap if you start.
And then, not to bury the lead crown jewel here of the Hawks, Trae Young. Not the easiest of matchups for him. Does get a little better for him without Brogdon in the mix. Is he your favorite play of this game? Is he on the short list for top plays tonight?
Not my favorite play of the game. Favorite play from the Atlanta side.
Okay. Sorry, I should have qualified that, yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's not a good matchup. It's a slow Indiana team, but it really doesn't matter that much for Young. Like, he plays so many minutes. He's such a good player in so many ways that he can produce fantasy points. Played 36.7 minutes last night, so they weren't joking when they said that his minutes weren't limited. In spots like this, like the guard position is stacked, and it's a tough matchup, but it's an appealing price tag for Young. So normally what ends up happening for me, and it's kind of the same thing I mentioned with Vooch against Utah, he clearly is underpriced for his ceiling. And if he were going to be really popular here, it's not really that difficult for me to just find other options. But assuming people kind of shy away from him because of the matchup and they go to guards that they think are in a little bit better spot, getting to Trae Young regardless of matchup is pretty much always a good tournament strategy if he's going to be low on.
All right. Anything else from this game?
No.
Let's talk for a moment about our presenting sponsor here. This would be Yahoo. They are running a $150,000 baller today. That is for NFL. It is currently just under half full. This is a $10 entry fee contest. I will be shocked if it gets over 80%, even though it is 150 max. You have, let's see, $15,000 going to first, so that is a reasonable payout there. If you min cash, you double up. That's $20. That's also very, very nice. If you've not yet signed up for Yahoo, let me drop a link to the article in chat here. This is a baller-centric article for the NFL contest this weekend. You have, you've got contests up and down the slate. We'll have a 4-gamer, a 3-gamer, and then a 2-gamer. Tomorrow, this analysis works for any of the contests, but it's got the Yahoo pricing as well as the Osmo value grades and point grades attached there as well. That is a premium offering, but we just give you a sneak peek here in this article, but that is definitely one to check out there. There's going to be some overlay. I can't say that for some of the other contests that are out there, so definitely check out Yahoo. Bottom section of this article will describe how you can use our promo code link and with your initial DFS deposit, get up to $30 matched by Yahoo. Those will come in YSRPs, Yahoo Sports Rewards points, and those are available for immediate use into any contests. Let me see. Generic question. What's wrong with Young?
What?
I don't know. I'm assuming Trae Young. Nothing, I think. Any concerns with Mr. Young at all?
No, I don't understand the question.
I don't either, but I needed a transition to get me out of that other one. Adam, you're not picking up what I'm putting down, because you know what? I'm putting down poop, and who wants to pick up poop? Let's talk Boston and Chicago here. Woohoo! Exciting game. We've got, let's see, Zach LaVine should be back. He's been dealing with a sore ankle. Kemba Walker, 103-degree fever. Yesterday he was out. Would not surprise me if he sits out this one against Chicago. Currently, Boston is favored on the road by 1.5. You've got Enes Kanter, who dealing with a face injury. Let me go look at that one. Must have got popped with an elbow or something. But he's someone that's prices come up, so getting a little tougher to just take a chance on him. You had a dud game there by Jason Tatum last night. I called him the bust of the night, and then I went around and played him in cash. That felt real good. What do you dislike or like from Boston here? Let's assume Kemba is out.
Yeah, I still like Hayward. Like he obviously disappointed last night, but his price tag didn't really move. He played 37 minutes. Like, you're talking about a guy that should average around the fantasy point per minute, playing 30, 34 to 37 minutes at 7K. That's solid. Chicago's been playing well defensively, but as Josh pointed out the other day, there are some numbers that point to them getting pretty lucky over the last month or so. I wouldn't expect them to be as good defensively as they have been, even if they are a decent team. So not really concerned there. Marcus Smart, 5,400, still going to be a good option. Obviously, he's going to get a lot of ownership because he was great last night, played 35 and a half minutes. You can go right back there. You can go to Tatum and Brown. Tatum's price tag came down a little bit. So did Jalen's on DraftKings. So they're a little bit more appealing. They look like pretty good options. I think Hayward and Smart are the two that stand out the most. And then you did get 20. You got 48 minutes combined from Daniel Tice and Enes Kanter. They are both affordable as well, especially Tice, who's only 3,800 on DraftKings with power forward eligibility. So I think Boston's got a lot of good plays here.
So Kanter popped in the chin, did receive stitches. He is a game time decision. I suspect he'll play, but we'll know more about that. So that was kind of an interesting one here. It also says this courtesy of Roto World, to give credit where credit is due. Over his last 8 games, he's averaging 11.5 points, 11.5 rebounds. That's pretty solid. If he's out, there's a chance Taco Fall could be up from the G League. I point that out, Adam, because he's one of the leading vote getters in the NBA All-Star race.
Yeah.
This is not since I was stuffing the ballot box in honor of Vlade Divac has there been a more egregious take for who should be an all-star. When I was in college, Adam, was some Miller Highlight or I don't know, some beer company. Oh, I guess it would have been probably Miller Genuine Draft or some new beer had come out and they were sponsoring the All-Star game. So they dropped off these boxes of ballots at our fraternity. And this is where you would scratch off, like, use a nickel or a quarter and scratch off the ballot for which player you wanted to indicate that you had on your thing. And they gave us beer if we filled them out. I have no idea why. There was no stipulations on what we needed to do other than we just needed to fill them out, and they dropped off cases of beer with cases of ballots. There you go. Fun college story. I think they do that online now. Are you familiar with quarters and nickels? Just asking.
What?
I'm just saying if you're paying attention. All right. Anything else from Boston, Chicago? Because I want to spend some time on our next game. It's the Wizards and Denver.
No, I think that Boston's just one of they're kind of like Indiana, where assuming Kemba doesn't play, you have a key guy missing, and they are very, very affordably priced for a team with a 115 team total.
All right. Shout out to David Blakeney, $5 super chat here, says 2 of the hardest working guys in DFS. Have a great Saturday. Thank you. You too. And to the rest of the chat, have a good Saturday. All right. We are going to spend a little time on this game because it's an interesting one. So you've got Denver at Washington. Washington on a back-to-back. Denver favored by 12 in Washington. You have Nikola Jokic, who has been less than stellar his past few games. They didn't really need him. Got some foul trouble, etc. But he has not topped 40 fantasy points in 3 games. That does not feel great. The Wizards really do not have anybody that can guard him. Not that they have anybody that can guard anyone in the front court. We should see as many minutes as Jan Mahimny can get to. That would be probably something in the 24 to 26 minute range. He's sort of in play. If Beal, let's start out with Beal playing. Does that just suppress most everything else you're looking at from Washington?
Mostly, yeah, because you're getting, for one, a tough matchup against Denver. But for 2, you're just the prices have come up on most of the guys that have benefited from Beal being out 3 of the last 4 games. So if Beal is in, it suppresses pretty much everything. I think Jordan McRae would still be reasonable, just because he should still be the leading scorer off the bench. There's still a really good chance that he's in the closing lineup. But beyond that, it takes value away from pretty much everyone.
All right, so I wanted to update this. I thought it was kind of a calf injury. So from 3 days ago, Beal was quoted as saying he'll miss one of the games on Friday or Saturday. They don't want his leg injury to linger all season, etc. So he did not play Friday, so decent chance he's in there today. Scott Brooks did say on Friday in his pregame presser that Beal banged knees with Jonathan Isaac. Was that when Isaac went down.
What
I'm just saying. So the one game Beal did play in the stretch, he banged knees. So it was a calf injury, but now they're calling it a lower leg injury.
Oh, yeah.
And they're just what I'm trying to say is they don't want to have him play on a bum wheel, which is something that can continually be aggravated throughout the season. They knew he was not going to play both games of the back-to-back. There's a decent chance he plays tonight, but there's also a decent chance he sits tonight. So who the hell knows?
Yeah, I think just from bits and pieces of like Scott Brooks talking, I thought that they were just kind of resting him yesterday, and he was pretty good today. But Brooks kind of said things. I don't remember the exact wording, but it was kind of stuff like, when Bradley comes back or stuff like that. That kind of made me think he might sit today too.
Okay, and I was just looking because I wanted to make sure this is an 8:00 game. So even though it's in Washington, it's not a 7:00 start. So they've done a pretty good job of ruling guys out because it really doesn't matter at this point. But there's a chance we don't know the news. I feel that if we don't know the news, he's probably not going to play tonight.
My assumption is that he sits. And again, it's a guess. I'm not going to be much or any better than 50-50 on guesses like that. But if I have to guess before lock, I would assume he doesn't play.
If we want to play the guessing game, I'm guessing Isaiah Thomas feeling a little refreshed last night after playing just 90 seconds. I didn't go back and watch the play, but do you want to describe what happened? Because it sounded like it was completely unintentional, but so I don't think there was malice or anything behind this. But can you describe what happened for his ejection?
Like by the letter of the law, he deserved to be ejected, I guess. But he had the ball along the sideline. Melo tied him up. They're kind of like fighting for the ball. And as that's happening, they're both moving towards the ref standing on the sideline, who isn't giving any ground. He's kind of just standing there until it gets to the point where he's directly next to Isaiah Thomas, who then like turns away from Melo and has the ref right in front of him. And so he like puts his arm up into the ref's chest and pushes the ref back, and the ref immediately ejects him from the game. I thought it was pretty insane because I think that's kind of a normal reaction. Like you're wrestling with Melo for the ball, you turn and there's another dude like right in your face. You kind of just like brace yourself and push him away. I would be shocked if he even realized it was the ref compared to any other person on the floor. And the crazy thing to me was that then they reviewed it and they stuck with that. So I don't know. I think the ref kind of just let the ego get in the way and wasn't going to overturn himself at that point. But I thought it was a pretty insane decision.
How tall was the ref? A big guy or like big? I mean, was he like a 6-foot dude or more Isaiah? I only ask because Isaiah Thomas is. Yeah, it's one thing if it's Isaiah Thomas turning around and doing that versus, I don't know, a 6'8", 240-pound forward doing that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the ref like stumbled over and kind of bumped into the people sitting courtside. But yeah, I mean, it was the thing to me was like, just call the jump ball like you should have, and then back up so that Isaiah doesn't run into you and we don't have a problem.
Interesting. Okay, I wanted to ask that. Let me see here. Oh, quick question, a good one from chat. And this is the DFS strategy show, so we'll hit this and then I'll turn Adam loose on this. Matt Armstrong, new subscriber here. Hey, you can get into premium Slack as well, but throw stuff out there in the YouTube chat, and that is fine. But says, new subscriber here, question: when playing tournaments, do you like to optimize by 75% of performance or just by projections? So I think what he's asking is, do we look more for the floor and hope there's upside? Generally, what most of us do here is the projections you get for the end for all sports. Projections are going to be a median outcome. You then have a range of outcomes. So Fantasy Cruncher, very helpful. Other optimizers have this as well. But you can set it up for what's called randomness. So if you have Fantasy Cruncher Pro, this creates it a little tighter towards that mean and gives it more of a bell curve spread. If you have regular Fantasy Cruncher, whatever you put in, it's just going to pick a number plus or minus that percentage point. So if you say 20% randomness and you have somebody that's scoring, you projected for 20 points, they're going to pick a number for each crunch, not for that entire player pool, but just each time it runs a crunch, it's going to say somewhere, pick a number between 16 and 24. what that does is it just kind of it changes up your player pool. It's one way that your player pool changes up. It can give high and low outcomes for players and just gives a different mix. This is very helpful if you're running mass multi-entry. If you're just doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 lineups, I probably wouldn't turn that on from that standpoint. So that's kind of how we handle randomness. If you're looking for upside, Adam, I'm going to let you answer this one since you do a lot of tournaments, but how do you try to harness upside from players when you're building tournament lineups?
I use their I use median projections as opposed to 75% to answer that question. But when I build my lineups, I use the randomness like you were talking about, and I base that on the volatility of the players based on their standard deviations, so that players that have more volatility get a bigger randomness number. So that gets me a little bit more upside into my lineups. And then when I choose my lineups, it's a factor of ownership combined with the projection. So it's using randomness, using like exposure caps, and but yeah, I use median projections since I do enough other stuff to make sure I'm getting upside in my lineups.
All right, and then one of the other tools we do have available here, it's called the Boom Bust tool. So this is directly coming out of Alex's model. So he has set up probabilities based upon each player achieving their upside, and it's identified. It's different by sides. I think it's a multiplier and a constant, but it's different by sides. But it gives you a percentage. So someone that has high volatility, let's just pick Hassan Whiteside, for example. He may, if he's like appropriately, or animals, if he has a median price point of 5.5 points per $1,000, he probably has a 25% chance of exceeding that, whatever we set as his boom, and 25% chance of busting. If he's priced at 9,500, like he is more recently, that probably moves to something like a 14% chance of booming, and it probably changes to, I don't know, 45, 50% chance of busting. That's related on their price point and their point per dollar, not their overall outcome. So if he's 9,500 and he scores 47 points, he doesn't destroy you, but that's not a boom performance. It's closer to the I could have used more performance. So it's all math problems here. Do you have an easy way of describing that for people?
I do basically the same thing as that does, and it's how I determine my player exposures in Cruncher. But yeah, it's just how you can, if you're using a median projection, and you can determine how often you expect a player to reach a certain score. And so, if you create a target score based on their salary, you can figure out how likely they are to exceed that. You can figure out how likely they are not to reach, another number to use as their floor. And so you can, even using median projections, when you're doing stuff like that, you're creating lineups where you're getting good lineups that you can choose from based on the volatility of your players.
All right. Follow-up question. So dividing boom performance by ownership will ultimately give you a leverage metric. I don't do that, but I think the answer is yes. Because that's where you're trying to get the. I guess that would be another way of measuring a percentage of success.
You can do it that way. There's issues with trying to do it across too many people, but like if you were just to take two players, like let's say Whiteside and Vooch are the same price, and you figure out the boom percentage for both, you can look at, and then you look at the ownership, you can figure out exactly how you should leverage those two against each other. Yeah.
All right. And then just to kind of finish this thought out, because I've done this two different ways. So last year, I was trying things differently, and we have this available this year, but I was uploading randomness by individual player, which is very easy to do when you're using Fantasy Cruncher. It's just another column. We do have the standard deviation that's available as part of, I can't remember, I think it's on the Boom Bust page, but it is definitely part of the projections we have available here from Alex. I have not been doing that, one, just because I just haven't, but two, with the advent of the Fantasy Cruncher, the Fantasy Cruncher Pro not being just a random number between the range you're given, but forcing it still closer to the median and giving it actual a little bit more standard deviations. To me, that changes the I don't want to say margin of error, but I think you can, at this point, we're trying to determine how many angels dance on the head of the pin. It really doesn't freaking matter. Because I am looking for a player pool, because I want a certain mix of the players on different rosters, because I want a different number or because sometimes I want 2 different between each roster, sometimes I want 3. I'm looking at a variety of other things that me focusing just on that one individual outcome for each player, it's going to come out in the wash, and I'm doing 4 other things that's going to overwrite whatever I do with regards to the accuracy of doing it that way. The less variables and input you have going into your player pool, yes, the more you can kind of control it and have it doing what you want to do. I focus more on controlling it with my player ownership or individual ownership caps, and then mix of players coming in from the different games and some other stuff that I look at there, meaning faster paced games, etc. The one thing you want to be very careful of is all of these attributes are coming in if you're using good projections. They're already baked into that projection model. So if you're saying, oh, I'm going to bump this guy by a couple points because he's playing in a faster matchup, you're now accounting for that faster matchup twice. So this is something you just want to understand. I focus more on, I may bump things up or down because that's how many players or the percentage of them I want to get into my overall player pool. Then I let the optimizer go from there. But I'm just curious for you, I'm guessing you look at it controlling things slightly differently by going more with the individual player, but also you're spending more time than anybody crawling in the weeds of all of this stuff. So this allows you to influence it more with more of a personal touch than what I'm doing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't adjust too much by hand. I just have everything set up to work on its own.
There you go. Wait, you mean work smarter, not harder?
Yeah.
Oh, we could patent that. That's a good saying. Perhaps we'll make millions off it. All right, so back to the Wizards. So assuming Beal is out. Oh, funny note, last week 2 different people did not like my analysis of Bradley Beal. They told me I was an idiot. I may be an idiot, but I wasn't on the Bradley Beal thing. So one guy said we need to get
play. That doesn't count.
Oh, I'm not. No, I'm not counting. They didn't like the analysis when we were on either side of it, where I said I did not feel like he had a reasonable enough shot to get over 60 fantasy points, and we discussed back and forth different things. They didn't like me talking about clean looks, Adam, and they said I should let the other guy talk more since clearly he knows more about box scores than I do.
No, I mean the clean looks thing is legitimate. Like if Bradley Beal were taking 35 wide open threes, he's going to score more points than if he takes 35 contested threes. But it doesn't. Like I still obviously disagreed with you about the ceiling because the opportunity.
Absolutely, and that was a very fair point.
But yeah, clean. I mean that does matter. It's going to affect It's going to affect the efficiency. It's the same reason or same way where if you're projecting points for someone, they're gonna, even if you give them the same number of shots in a game, they're going to project a little bit higher against a bad defense than a good defense because they're going to get better looks.
Yes.
And the way it affects Beal is that with no one around him, teams are able to contest better. Like it's harder for him to get good looks when he doesn't have Davis Bertans, for example, hanging out on the wing that teams have to shade towards.
Unfortunately, that's all distilled right into the in-game box score, so people can check that out. Don't do it that way. Listen to what Adam has to say. Listen to what Laffy has to say, etc. Eddie, etc., etc. One last one here from Matt Armstrong. He says he likes to boost team totals based upon sharp Vegas action, but he's not sure if that's baked into Osmo projections already. Well, so with regards to the Vegas, which I know you're saying, yeah, Vegas is already put in there. With regards to type of action or money line or public sharps, squares, all that, I don't know. I suspect probably not in ours, but we have so many other variables and inputs there. It's probably accounts for it adjacently compared to that, because if you're looking at what type of money is coming in, meaning is it a sophisticated wagerer or is it Joe Q public, their projection models that are influencing the lines probably account for a lot of the same things we are. So you got to be careful. It's a really huge circle. I'm not describing that very well, but most things that are at least measurable are in the projection models here with what Alex is doing. He adjusts them and hones them all the time. These are back tested, and it's also kind of being back tested as well against Tom JK, one of the other top gamers out there, and then 1-800-Eddie. They also have a lot of influence on the models and regression testing, etc., with what we're doing here with projections. So there are some super duper sharp people accounting for the different stuff here. So that's like that with a lot of most projection systems that you're going to be getting from a service, etc. They're taking into account more than what we're going to be doing. So like Adam, just throw a few of the inputs that you have coming up with yours. With your projections, usage, assist percentage, it's all based upon minutes, pace of opponents' play, yada yada yada. I mean, everything under the sun is kind of in what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So
yes.
My point is, I guess no stone is unturned in our various projections here. So anything that you're doing on top of it is putting your thumb on the scale. If you're doing that to achieve a particular outcome of your player mix, that's fine. If you're trying to make the projections better, that's why we use the randomness or a range of outcomes. Is that an easier way to say it?
Yeah.
Okay. Bradley Beal not playing in this next assumption. What do you got for us, and where the hell did Jordan McRae come from?
Guys has always been a scorer. It's just a matter of him getting minutes. But yeah, I mean, if Beal's out, like, it's a tough matchup still for Washington, but they have to score somehow, and they will. McRae would still be a really good option. He played 33 minutes yesterday off the bench. He's going to get a ton of usage if Beal is out. Troy Brown would be a guy that I'm interested in going back to. He really disappointed yesterday in 31 minutes, but he's still affordable. He's 5,400 on DraftKings. He's got about a 22% usage rate without Beal on the floor this year. He takes on a bigger role offensively. So I'd be interested in going back there. And then I don't mind taking a shot on like an IT2 or a Nish Smith at cheap salaries, but I think that Brown and McRae would be the two priorities for me.
All right, and then front court, we kind of hit on Jan Mahimni, but yeah, that's my assessment of the Wizards' front court right now until they get some guys back.
Yeah, I mean, Mahimni should play 26 to 28 minutes.
But Jonathan Williams, you can't go to. I don't think there's anybody you can really go to outside of Mahimni in the front court in this current iteration.
I mean, you can, if you need a really cheap punt, you can go to Pasek Sneaks. He's 3,400, but I would rather not go there at center.
All right. On the other side here, one guy I really, really like is Barton. That would be a Will Barton. His price has come up on DK, but I do like him with the small forward eligibility. He is 7,300, but right now he is sitting in my placeholder lineup. He is and the reason I have him in here is I like the floor. He has been regularly getting in the upper 30s. That's very nice. He does have upside, topping out into the mid 40s. But for me, it's a little bit more of this floor. He can contribute in a variety of ways. His rebounding numbers have been up. His assist numbers are up. We know that he has solid steal numbers. Usually he's amongst the league leaders, getting close to 2 steals per game. And then he's going to play probably 35 or so minutes. That is a recipe for success going against the Wizards. Tournaments, yeah. Does he have that 50 fantasy point upside? Well, let's see. He has topped 50 fantasy points exactly once this year. So perhaps not for tournaments, but with regards to someone that I have a good confidence in of hitting that 40 fantasy point plateau, for me, it's going to be Will Barton. I still like Nikola Jokic. This is the perfect recipe for a triple-double for him. One of his patented 30-minute triple-doubles where he scores 12 points, but it's still a triple-double. Talk to me here about the Nuggets.
Really good matchup, obviously. Some decent pricing. They are priced up, but you have a good spot for Jokic. It's a really good spot for Jamal Murray as well. I think that there's a pretty good chance, one of those guys has a big game here. Wouldn't say either one's a priority in the context of the entire slate because there are a lot of good options priced around them as well. You can also look here for value. Michael Porter is kind of interesting because you've seen a lot of the value get priced up really quickly on DraftKings, but he hasn't. His playing his box scores or his game logs are obviously skewed by Gary Harris being out, but in the most recent game with Harris back, Porter still played 22 minutes off the bench, and that would be enough to make him appealing against Washington. Obviously, you're relying on him being able to score, but it's a good matchup. He's a good scorer. He's going to shoot a lot, so I think he's an interesting value option.
All right, got 20 minutes. We got 4 games to go. Let's hit on these. Our next one here, Detroit and Golden State. Would have been a great windmill slam, as the kids like to say, spot for Andre Drummond, but he's now in trade rumors. I don't know if that's good or bad. He does not need to show out because we all know what Andre Drummond can do. Feels like they might be sort of protecting the asset potentially. It sounds like currently Atlanta seems to be the team with the most interest. Detroit, 1 more year, I believe, if I've read everything correctly, on Drummond's contract. How old do you think Andre Drummond is?
25.
26. I thought 28. So he's still a little bit on the younger side. Still,
the only reason I knew it was 25, 26 was because I've done that double take like 5 times where I hear how old Drummond is and I'm shocked.
I heard you invoke Greg Oden on a show earlier this week.
I was talking about Ayton.
Yeah, but that's one of those where he looks older, I guess. Feels like he's been around forever. So we should have Willie Cauley-Stein back. He has been dealing with load management, or some people call it an illness. But he is someone that they're going to need against Drummond. Bruce Brown was game time decision, but ended up playing. I can't remember. He had some sort of lower leg injury, but he's been dealing with an illness as well. But he played the last game, so he probably should be good. It looks like we're coming in, I'm using air quotes, mostly healthy. D'Angelo Russell is out, but of the other players involved in this game, we know their of the other players that have not already been ruled out, most of them are going to be playing tonight. Let's start off with Drummond. How are you feeling about him? God, this is a perfect 2020 spot for him. Does it concern you that he's now in trade rumors, considering you're paying $9,900 on DraftKings?
Not really. He's not on the injury report. I'd be more concerned if they were listing him as like questionable or something with his illness. If obviously just keep an eye on it throughout the day, but it's not something that's I'm not gonna like shy away from Drummond just because I'm afraid he might get traded or something. It is a good spot for him. He's more productive without Blake, who's already been ruled out. Keith is already out as well, so I think Drummond looks like one of the better center options today.
All right. And again, I didn't feel as confident putting him into cash on the first cheat sheet that I did, the DraftKings one, but he is definitely an outstanding option overall today. Christian Wood, hey, he is who I thought he was. A guy that's probably going to get about a fantasy point per minute, may or may not get decent minutes. This is a nice matchup for him. He's up to 5,900 now on DK. Feels like late slate only for me in this one. How are you feeling about Christian Wood? And then anything on the backcourt that you like for the Pistons?
Not really that interested in Christian Wood. It is worth pointing out he played a lot in the first half against the Clippers. He probably would have played more in the second half, but the game was blowing out and he didn't come back in. Still expecting like 26 to 28 minutes from him. The price tag's gotten pretty high, so I wouldn't expect to get a whole lot of him. I do think Derrick Rose is interesting. He's cheap. He's playing 26 to 28 minutes. He said he can play more. Dwayne Casey says he can't. But at the same time, if you look at the game against the Clippers, you got 27 minutes, and that's without him playing at all in the last 5 minutes of that game. If the game's close, even if you assume that he subs out and comes back in, you're probably adding at least a couple more minutes there. So maybe a little bit more upside than normal for Rose, but without Blake or Luke Kennard, you're going to get a lot of usage for Rose. You're going to get a lot of assist opportunities. So I think he looks like a really good option at 6,100. He's my second favorite guy on the Pistons behind Drummond.
Okay. Moving on to the dubs here. Got a bunch of guys in the low to mid sixes on DK. Draymond Green. Yeah, whatever. Alec Burks, I like 6,000. That seems fair. I'm okay with that with the Russell out. Damian Lee, 6,500, ticking up. Rebounds have been very, very nice here for him, but tougher matchup to get rebounds against somebody like Drummond. And then if Willie Cauley-Stein is back, that's one more person he's going to be competing with. I'm still okay with Damian Lee, but not as excited as I have been kind of since the few games before Christmas and the last couple for him. Do we have any takeaways from the Dubs?
Cauley-Stein being back obviously muddies up the front court rotation a bit. Marquise Chris should go back to the bench. Cauley-Stein's 5,100. That's an okay salary. It's not a great value, I don't think. Alec Burks was absolutely awful in the last game against Minnesota. He started. He only played 22 minutes. I'm trying to see if he was in foul 3. Yeah, he was in some foul trouble. So actually, he was in a lot of foul trouble. So I think it's a potentially good bounce back spot for Burks. It's a good matchup against Detroit. People will probably shy away because of that last game. He's $6,000 on DraftKings, which is affordable. But I'm just not really concerned about the minutes because if you look, he got 1 foul in his first stint. He picked up his second and third foul in the second quarter, picked up his 4th foul in the third, subbed back in for 24 seconds in the 4th, and picked up his 5th. So he lost a good, probably 8 minutes at least to foul trouble there. So I'd be pretty comfortable going back to at least 30 minutes for Burks, if not more, in a good spot here. So he looks pretty good. Draymond looks fine at 6,300. I think that there are some pretty good values on Golden State, even with Cauley-Stein back.
All right, as we move along into our next one, Drummond or Jokic is the question from chat.
Drummond.
All right, our next game we have the one and only Luka Doncic. I'm sorry I didn't flip this over. What's the deal? Is Porzingis out?
Yeah.
How long? What is his estimated return?
I'm not sure.
Let me see here. He is out through the weekend dealing with a sore knee. Okay. So there you go. Check back on Monday. But Luka Doncic, 12,400. Feels like they're undervaluing him on DraftKings. Adam, do you get a pair of socks with that price?
Yeah, I mean, he's expensive, but he deserves it, obviously. Played 34 minutes last game, played 40 the game before that without Porzingis. For the season, he has played 292 minutes now without Porzingis on the floor. He's averaged 1.95 DraftKings points per minute. He's obviously a really good play in a good spot against Charlotte. It's a really expensive price point, but with a 9-game slate on a Saturday with plenty of value, I don't think it should be that tough to get there.
Yep, concur on that one. Is there anybody else from Dallas? What is going to be your trigger or your indicator to get you to lean one way or the other for Dwight Powell or Maximilian Kleber?
It's a tough spot because Rick Carlisle changes his lineups constantly.
Jalen Brunson would like to say, yeah, he does.
Right. I mean, you had JJ Barea start the last game. Apparently, and I didn't confirm this, but there were tweets that it was like he had a bunch of like friends and family in from Puerto Rico, so maybe that was just a random spot start and you get Brunson back. In which case, Brunson would be a decent point per dollar option. He's still not very productive when he plays alongside Luka, but that's one spot you'll be looking to in the lineup. DeLon Wright is questionable. If he's out, it opens the door for more minutes for Brunson, Curry, Barea, whoever. Also, you're looking to the front court where 2 games ago with Porzingis out, Kleber started next to Powell. Last game, he did not, but then he started the second half over Powell. So there's just a lot of moving pieces here, and we won't really know what to do with it until we get a lineup. But Luka obviously is the key piece there that you can feel good about getting to kind of no matter what.
All right, I'm looking at it's still 5-6 hours away, but Baller on Yahoo is not going to come close to filling for NFL. It is just half full now. It is $10 to get in. Yeah, it is 150 max, but I don't know how many people are maxing these things out because they have run with the overlay the entire season. This one feels pretty advantageous, and this is intentional by Yahoo. Because they, even last week when it was all the games and there was a little bit of a holiday hangover for people, but they didn't fill last week. They haven't filled yet again this season. They keep sizing these things down. There's no way they fill this one. I'm gonna drop the link into chat to our article here. So you can get your YSRPs with your initial deposit bonus. You get the free article there for the NFL. That analysis works for all of the games. I've highlighted a couple players at each position that we want to be interested in, but definitely check that out. We've got two NFL shows today That'll be going off 2 hours before kickoff of the first game. And then in the can already, we've got On the Contrary. So after you're done listening to us, you can go listen to Alex. You can listen to Spags. Alex, of course, is Osmo. And then you can listen to Brian Hooper. Who the hell's Brian Hooper? Why would I want to listen to him? That's Brick75. I think he's currently the 7th best gamer in the world. He's been on a few shows before. Very, very smart. He likes to take Adam's money, too. Adam is not paying attention, but that's okay. Wrapping up this one here from the Dallas side, DeLon Wright, dealing with a foot injury, played less minutes than I was hoping for last night, or probably in the 2 nights ago in their last game. But yeah, it's a whole lot of question marks here, kind of from the Dallas side. We're going to need a little bit more news from the Charlotte side of things. Adam, you've got Devonte Graham. It was actually Rozier that had a little bit of had the slightly better performance. Their prices have diverged somewhat, particularly on DraftKings. You're paying about 25% more almost for Graham than you are for Rozier. I kind of view these guys as sort of interchangeable. I prefer Devonte Graham, but now that his price is above Rozier, we definitely have to start considering Rozier at some point. Not the best matchup for either one of them, but looking towards kind of our robust late slate tonight, how are you feeling about the Charlotte backcourt?
I agree with you on Graham and Rozier. Like, Graham's the guy that you would rather have. He's the better producer per minute on average, but the prices are a little further apart than they probably should be, considering that they play similar minutes. You know, you're getting 37, 38 minutes most games from Graham. You're getting 36, 37 from Rozier, and the ceilings aren't that much different between the two of them. The average production's a bit different, but probably not worth that big of a price difference. So I would give the edge to Rozier at his price point compared to Graham. But like you said, not a particularly appealing matchup for either one. Only a 102 team total for Charlotte, which right now I believe is the lowest on the slate. So yeah, I mean, they look like the two best options from the Hornets. They are reasonably priced for their ceilings, but it's just not a matchup that I'm really excited about.
Okay, in the front court, it's nothing really to add for the Charlotte front court here. Marvin Williams should be back. That just further muddies the waters in this one. Milwaukee, we've got a few people out for the Bucks. Where did my notes go? I thought we had a few. I thought Dante DiVincenzo. Oh, I guess it's only Dante DiVincenzo. Is the only one who's out. We've got Eric Bledsoe is back. He's sort of being eased into things, but intriguing there at 5,900. Giannis 11,500. He's amazing. There's my analysis on that one. We know that DeJounte Murray is out. Hit that a little earlier, but Derrick White is the guy you want to go to first. I would probably take Patty Mills second, and then Bryn Forbes would be my third value option there. Those are all some $10 ballers there for you on Yahoo. What do you like from this game? And then we'll hit the last one quick. We got about 6 minutes.
Yeah, I like White as a value option. Obviously, it's a tough matchup against Milwaukee. You could see Patty Mills draw the start. I would expect it to be Derrick White. The rotation for San Antonio has pretty much been Murray and White splitting the point guard minutes, and then Mills and Forbes splitting 48 minutes. So I'm guessing White gets the start. I'm guessing that Lonnie Walker gets more run, which would make him a dart throw tournament option just because we know he can get hot. But White would be the guy that I feel most comfortable with here. I think $6,700 on DeMar DeRozan is a pretty solid salary, as is $7,200 on Aldridge as well. Just obviously, though, a really tough matchup. I don't want to go too crazy with my exposure to the Spurs, but White does look like one of the better point per dollar value options.
All right. Last game of the night. This one's kind of going to be a fun one. New Orleans at Sacramento. We've got a 225 over under. I just point that out because it is the third highest on the evening, the main slate there. Second highest depending on your source of choice there, but it is a good one. It's going to be a close game as well. You've got Sacramento actually favored by 3 at home. You had the Pelicans lose last night in LA. I just want to look here and see. And then Sacramento had a day off before coming back. DeJounte pardon me, not Dejounte Murray, De'Aaron Fox laid down a monster, Adam. 30 minutes, 60 fantasy, well, tick shy of 60 fantasy points against Memphis. 27 points, 9 assists, 5 steals, 2 blocks. Let's see, the 2 blocks now have him with 7 on the season, eyeballing that quickly. So that probably not going to happen again. But good to see him with some heavy production. He has played 30 minutes, 31 minutes, and 33 minutes in the 3 games since missing a game with the back spasms. Of course, he killed everybody the day after Christmas, playing only 2 minutes after taking a hard fall onto his back. Talk to me here about Fox in a not so easy, in a decent matchup with the price coming up, is what I want to say there.
Yeah, I think I like the spot here. New Orleans is not a good defensive team, and they play at a fast enough pace. His salary on DraftKings is up to 8,600, which isn't, I wouldn't say he's overpriced, but it's getting to the point where you don't have a lot of wiggle room there. But on Yahoo at $30 and on FanDuel at 7,300, he looks like one of the better guard options, one of the better values on the slate. So pretty site dependent for him. I think that the upside is obviously through the roof, but you're definitely paying for it on DraftKings.
Yeah, rounding things out there for the Kings, Buddy Hield, been getting a ton of minutes. We know that Bagley is out. He is also taking the second most shots from behind the arc in the NBA. He's 7,100 on DK. That's nice, but not as nice as the 6,900 for Richaun Holmes. Derrick Favors got there last night in the 4th quarter. This is an intriguing matchup for him. Back-to-back, so let me just look and see here on no rest. In 4 back-to-back games, he is playing 26 minutes per. We know that he does not have a minutes cap. He has played 34 last night, 35 the night before that. I would think I'm assuming he will play on the back-to-back. I'm guessing 30, 31 minutes feels like a better baseline for this one, but he's somewhat intriguing. Branch out to either side. What's catching your eye as we wrap up today's show?
A pretty tight pricing again on DraftKings. I think that Favors is still reasonable, but his salary did jump like $1,100 since last night, and it is a back-to-back in a huge pace down spot. So take that for whatever it's worth. I think Ingram is reasonable, but again, he's expensive. I would give the slight edge to De'Aaron Fox at that price point on DraftKings. Just talking guys from this game. Lonzo's salary is still affordable at 6,500. He's playing big minutes, assuming he plays well, which is a pretty big assumption, but I think that he's reasonable. So is Drew Holiday, but there's nobody from the Pels on DraftKings that looks like a great value compared to other guys that we've talked about today.
All right. Reminder, all sorts of content. We've got there's a Yahoo centric show that's on our YouTube channel for NFL. You can get On the Contrary. That's with Alex Baker and Brick 75. So the top 2 of the top 10 gamers in the world breaking down the slate. You can jump right on over to that. Now we will have NFL Live before lock. That will be at 1 hour before lock today, breaking down all the games. And then there will be a deeper dive today for NFL. I'm assuming that's going to be 2 hours before lock. That will be with Alex Laffy and Ben Rasa, the usual crew there. You're going to get live before lock for the NBA tonight, featuring one Fast Eddie Fear. He is back from Mexico. And of course, it's hockey night in Canada. So you're going to get some NHL show and love there from Jake Hari. With that, gamers, check out the Osmo promos, especially on Twitter, Osmo_COM. You can get $20 for 20 days, or 20 days for $20 using promo code 2020. That's 2020. Or you can get $200 off a 1-year Osmo subscription. That's the best discount we have offered to date. That is promo code New Year. That ends on the 10th. We do not tease these promos and then come up with the same or better one as soon as they run out. When these promos run out, people are sad that they don't take advantage of them because it's a while before good promos come back. Don't be one of those people. With that, you can follow Adam at ShipMyMoneyDFS on Twitter. I am at EMACDFS. And again, one last time, it is Osmo_COM.